We're back in Europe for today's League Lowdown, and we're in the heart of the continent itself. That's right, we're in Austria, of course, where the hills are alive with the sound of music. A nation adorned with stunning churches, castles and palaces. Where the Danube flows majestically, where winter sports enthusiasts are in their element, and where famous psychiatrists and composers descend from. But the national sport is of course football, and we're here to delve into the teams you could take charge of in your next Football Manager adventure. So let's dive straight into the League Lowdown Guide to Austria. In this edition of the League Lowdown, we will of course be focusing on Austria, a nation that doesn't always seem the most popular of choice with prospective Football Manager players, but it's a country that boasts some grand old names, as well as an epic challenge trying to dislodge the current dominant club at the top of this nation's game. So without further ado, let's check out the league structure. So this is the typical Bundesliga, Austria's top flight, which is a 12-team affair with teams playing each other home and away to create a 22-game regular season before the league splits in two, with the top 6 playing off for the title and the bottom 6 fighting it out to see who is the one team that gets relegated. Austria has got 2 Champions League places, is currently experiencing a slight rejig of its European places with the introduction of the Conference League, with the winners of the Austrian Cup also being one of the teams that grabs one of those European spots. Now, when it comes to relegation, the one team that drops out of the top flight goes into the playable second tier in Austria, which is a 16-team division, where the bottom 3 are relegated and only the top team gets promoted. For 2021, that team that's going to join the top flight is Ried, and they will be replacing Mattersburg, who didn't actually get relegated. They finished second bottom in the Austrian League, but far from bankruptcy, and so are dropping down to the amateur regional ranks of Austrian football, and so won't be playable in FM21. So that's how the league system works in Austria. Now it's time to have a look at the big clubs, including one that has dominated for several seasons. And that current dominant force at the top of Austrian football is, of course, Red Bull Salzburg, who have now won the last 7 league titles in a row, having won the 2019-20 campaign, making it 11 in total since Red Bull took over the club. Now, as that company is prone to doing when they did take over the former club called Austria Salzburg, they changed the club's crest, club colours as well, and the history of Austria Salzburg has actually moved with it to a new Phoenix club set up with the same name, Austria Salzburg, and Red Bull Salzburg now only have the history since Red Bull became involved with the club in 2005. But it's still a very successful, albeit very short history, with 11 Bundesliga titles and 6 cup wins as well. And Red Bull have not just invested in the playing staff, but also the infrastructure of the club as well as those top corporate facilities for those executives to enjoy. They've got superb training facilities, superb youth facilities, and they've got exceptional academy coaching as well as exceptional youth recruitment. So dominating domestic football, if you take over this club, is a bit of an easy task. But trying to make this club a force in European football, well, that might be attractive to some players of Football Manager. But there are plenty of other choices who have their own rich history that you could take charge of to try and challenge Red Bull's dominance at the top of Austrian football. And the first of those clubs is FK Austria, the team associated with the well-heeled middle classes of Viennese society. Now, this is a club that might be light on European success. The best they've done is reach the final of the 1978 Cup Winners' Cup. But when you combine their league and cup triumphs domestically, they hold the most titles of any club in Austria, having won that Bundesliga 24 times and the Austrian Cup 27 times as well. This is a club that is accustomed to success. But over recent years, well, Red Bull have taken that success away from them. They've got some excellent facilities in terms of excellent training facilities, excellent youth facilities, excellent academy coaching. Perhaps it's only their youth recruitment that lags behind a little bit. So in terms of taking over a team that you might be able to guide to try and challenge the dominance of Red Bull Salzburg, well, FK Austria are one definite option, but they have got fierce rivals across the city that might consider themselves likewise. And those rivals are, of course, Rapid, the team historically linked to Vienna's working classes, having been formed by the workers of a hat factory. Now, they have a very successful history, also quite an interesting one as well. In terms of league triumphs, they've won the Austrian Bundesliga more than any other club in the country, with 32 triumphs, and they've got 14 cup wins as well. Interestingly, though, they've also won the German Bundesliga and the German Cup as well, when Austrian teams competed in those competitions around the time of the Second World War. Like their rivals FK Austria, they've not managed to win a European competition, but they reached the final of the Cup Winners' Cup on 2 occasions, back in 1985 and in 1996 as well, and they've recently moved to a new stadium as well, so you'd expect them to have some pretty good facilities, such as their top corporate facilities, excellent training facilities, although their below average youth facilities and only their adequate youth recruitment might mean that producing your own talent is a little bit harder with this club than it might be from some of their rivals. But there are your traditional and your new big three in Austria, but there's plenty of other challenges out there for fans of the game. Perhaps a greater challenge might be to bypass the opportunity to take charge of Salzburg and their big budget and ignore the grand history that the big two from Vienna have, and instead take charge of one of Austria's provincial clubs who are trying to challenge the dominance of the big three. One club that's been doing a decent job of that over recent seasons is Linz Athletic Sports Club, who finished 4th in the league last season, as well as having a good European run as well. And in the 1960s, they managed to win the Austrian Cup, as well as the Austrian Bundesliga title on one occasion as well. So if you like the idea of trying to take over a club that is perhaps trying to assert a little bit of a challenge to the more established hierarchy, well, Linz are one option, but there's a couple more that are interesting as well. And one of those teams is Sturm Graz, a team with a bigger stadium and larger supporter base than Linz. This is a club that's got a very fierce rivalry with the big two from Vienna, and a burgeoning rivalry with Salzburg since Red Bull became involved with the club, as well as a very fiery city derby with Grazer AK. Sturm Graz have more than a century of history, although most of their success has come in the last 20 years or so. They've won the Cup 5 times, but the first of those wasn't until 1996, and they've won the Bundesliga 3 times as well, twice in the late 90s, and a 2011 victory as well. But since Red Bull started investing in Austrian football, well, it's become more of a challenge for any club in Austria to pick up silverware. But there is one more team in the top flight that might be an interesting challenger to the big boys who've made their way through the divisions in recent years. And the club in question is TSV Hartberg, a small team with just a 4,500 capacity stadium, but one that over the last 5 years has gone from the regional divisions of Austrian football to the top flight and has qualified for European competition as well. There's just one final stage of this epic journey left to complete, and you could be the football manager that takes on this task, trying to get a cup or a Bundesliga title for TSV Hartberg. Now, that is going to be an epic challenge given the financial restrictions that you would face. But some people like the idea of taking on challenges in Football Manager, and Hartberg could be an interesting one. But there's 2 playable divisions in Austria. If we drop into the leagues below, there's more challenges there as well. One interesting challenge could be to take charge of SV Horn. On the face of it, an unremarkable club, a very small stadium, and according to Football Manager, neither a domestic cup or a Bundesliga title in their cabinet. But the reason for that is that their 2008 Austrian Cup victory isn't recognised, because in that year Bundesliga clubs didn't participate in the Austrian Cup as the country readied itself to co-host Euro 2008. But in that year the cup was still played, teams from the lower divisions competed for it, and Horn were the team that won it. But it doesn't count as an official honour. Maybe they need you to take charge of them to try and get them another trophy in the cabinet that is recognised. This club has an interesting ownership. Kasuki Honda, the former Milan and Japan international, is part of a consortium that now owns the club, and maybe they could appoint you as their next manager to try and steer them back to glory. Perhaps one of the most interesting challenges in Austria in Football Manager is to take charge of Austria Salzburg. This is the club that was founded in 2005 by fans of the original Austria Salzburg that were upset at some of the actions of new owners Red Bull, notably a lack of respect for the club's history, changing the club's logo and changing the club's colours as well when fans protested about this, and the change of the club's kit from the traditional lilac and white instead to being changed to red and white. Well, Red Bull decided as an act of conciliation to allow the socks on the goalkeeper's away kit to continue to be the traditional purple and white. Some fans took this as such an insult and slight on the club's history that they founded their own Phoenix club, and Austria Salzburg started out in the amateur divisions in the 7th tier of Austria football, but after promotions made their way all the way back to the 2nd tier, but have now suffered a relegation that means they're back in the 3rd regional divisions. But this is a club that does have some success, having won the Bundesliga as recently as 1997. 3 times they've won it in their history. And if you can find a way of taking charge of this club, well, imagine taking them back to the Bundesliga and having that rivalry with Red Bull Salzburg as those two clubs battle it out at the top of the table. Might be a challenge that's worth pursuing. But for managers that like to take charge of a sleeping giant, a formerly great club that experienced great success in previous decades that has evaporated now, well, Admira might be an interesting challenge for you. They're in the Bundesliga, they play top-flight football, and they've won the cup 5 times during their history, and they've won the Bundesliga on 8 occasions as well. Their heyday was back in the 20s and 30s and have not experienced any trophies since the 1960s. But if you like the idea of taking charge of one of those clubs that formerly was one of the nation's greats and steering them back to the big time, well, Admira might be another interesting challenge that you might like to take charge of. So there is our guide to Austria, a country of new money and traditional powerhouses, as well as some epic challenges that you could take charge of as well. We will see you very soon as we make another nation the focus of our next League Lowdown.